Hello and welcome to Art Masters with me, Mrs. Portilla. Today we are going to be learning about a Series 1 artist for Art Masters. We're going to learn a little bit of history about this artist. We're going to see some slides of their work, and we're going to see a little glimpse of what this month's art project will be. You have been introduced to many master artists this year, each having worked in a different style. Monet was interested in light, Cezanne was interested in form, and of course Van Gogh's expressive texture and brushstrokes. Today I'm going to show you a couple of images on the next slide, and you're going to tell me if you think they were painted by many artists or just one artist. So look at these three pictures. How many of you think that one artist painted all these pictures? Do any of you think it was one artist? It was one artist, Pablo Picasso. It's hard to judge because he painted in so many different styles throughout his life. He was a great artist who always wanted to be working with new and fresh ideas. When he painted a certain way for a while, other artists would like what he was doing, and then they would begin to paint in the same way. So in order to remain fresh and different, he would change his style. Soon, other artists would be painting his style, so he would change it again. This happened over and over until he had developed a great many styles. Most artists spend a lifetime developing one style. Today we'll find out how Picasso was able to change his style so often and why he is considered the most innovative and influential artist of the modern era. Let's meet Picasso. This self-portrait, called Yo Picasso, was painted when he was 20 years old. You can see Van Gogh's influence in the brushwork. If you had to describe the brushwork, would you say it's smoothed out and not visible, or would you say it's bold? It's bold and very visible, just like Van Gogh's was. Picasso was born in Spain in 1881, and he could draw pictures before he could write or even talk. He would draw for hours with help from his father, who was an art teacher. His drawings became so good that he attended an art school when he was only 14 years old. All the other students were in their 20s. When he was 19, he left home to live in Paris, France, because that was the center of art at the time. Picasso did not give titles to his paintings. He disliked labels and names. Instead, he numbered them in the order that they were created. He said, one day scientists want to study creativity. They would study his works of art and be glad for the numbering system. The dealers and gallery owners who sold his paintings always wanted titles, so that's why he came up with this Yo Picasso. He painted himself many times, and each time he looked different and the style of the painting was different. Who remembers another artist who painted many self-portraits from this series? Van Gogh and Cezanne. How is this portrait different from the last? The mood is gloomy, sad, depressing, and cold. The colors are darker and cooler, meaning more blues. The warm orange tones are gone. His face lacks color. The bold brushstrokes are gone. The bright palette is gone. Let's look back. When you are in a really good mood and things are going well, have you noticed how everyone you meet seems happy too? But if you're in a bad mood and something has gone wrong, it often seems that everything around you is dreary and everyone is unhappy. When Picasso arrived in Paris, he was full of expectations, but it was very difficult for him to earn enough money to live and paint as he wished. He was poor and lonely. He had to live in a converted boathouse that was cold and damp. He lived among the poorest people, and he painted them. This marks the time in his career when Picasso began painting not only what he saw, but also what he felt. Raise your hand if this painting looks depressing and sad. Yes, look closely at the painting. What can you tell about this man's life? What is physically wrong with the man you see? He is blind. How does Picasso show this? His fingers are searching and reaching for the picture. His eyes are sunken into their sockets. And if you weren't sure, the title, The Blind Man's Meal, would tell you. What color is dominating this painting? Blue. Is blue warm or cool? It's cool, right? Just like water. The blue color makes him look very cold. When we feel sad, sometimes we say we're blue. Has anyone heard that expression? The paintings Picasso painted during the time he was struggling in Paris were very blue, so blue, in fact, that the historians have named this time of his life his blue period. He was a struggling artist trying to make himself known in the art world. He was poor and lonely. He was sad. For Picasso, feelings were very important, often more important than the subject matter or who he was painting. Look carefully at this next painting, and let's see what feelings he's trying to show. How is the mood in this painting similar to the mood in the blind man's meal? There still seems to be a little bit of a feeling of sadness. Their faces aren't really smiling. How are the colors different from those of the last one? These ones are brighter and lighter. There's some red and pink tones, and the blackness of hopelessness is replaced by the softer, lighter colors, although it's still a little drab. During this time in his life, things got better for Picasso, and his future seemed brighter. People started to notice his work, and better yet, they were buying it. He fell in love with a girl named Fernandi. His happier feelings showed up in his paintings. Has anyone heard of the expression, life is rosy? Can you guess what name historians give to this period in Picasso's life? The Rose period. What is the subject matter of this painting? What is it about? I would say, based on their costumes, circus people. Picasso loved the circus and spent a lot of time there. Did he show a happy scene like the clowns during a performance? No, he wanted us to see something different about the circus. He wanted us to think about the kind of life the circus performers had. The figures are not talking amongst themselves or connecting or interacting at all. Is this a realistic or an abstract painting? I would say this one's more realistic than abstract. Picasso was able to paint, draw, and sculpt in both realistic and abstract styles. So realistic qualities, we would say their costumes look real, the people look like real people. Abstract would be the color of their skin, lack of detail, simpler shapes. So I would definitely say this one's a little more realistic. Interesting enough, a good quality Rose period painting today would sell for more than $25 million. But in Picasso's time, it sold for very little. That's probably why he wasn't feeling very happy. But this style of painting didn't last long because Picasso found a new one. Let's see what the next style is. Is there anything similar about this painting like the last one? Not really. Maybe the subjects, they're both performers. How are the shapes different? And the colors and the light from the last painting? The shapes are broken up and flattened out. They're angular, not round. The colors are much more bold, and there's definitely not a sense of like light or atmosphere or sky. When Picasso's friend Matisse saw the paintings that Picasso created in this new style, he said that the pictures seemed to be made of little cubes. After that, everyone called this style Cubism. Can we tell how many figures or people are in this painting? I would say there's 3 based on their face shapes and the instruments that they have. There's a harlequin and French clowns that perform without speaking. Although the shapes are not realistic, you can tell that the harlequin on the left is holding a violin. The bow is in the other hand. The man in the center is holding a clarinet on the upper left picture, and the other one is holding an accordion. Picasso didn't like labels put on his art like portrait, still life, or landscape. This next painting is considered a still life, if you remember we did with Cézanne, the bowl of fruit, but Picasso has done something to prevent it from being labeled still life. So the instruments here, we have our mandolin and a guitar. And do they seem like they're resting on the table? No, they seem to almost be dancing. Picasso has animated them and turned them into figures that are dancing on the table. So, should this be called a still life? Not really. This was Picasso's way of preventing the still life label from being placed on his painting. He has also included part of a landscape in the background for good measure. This is considered cubist. We can see those geometric square shapes. And the title is Mandolin and Guitar. Can we see the two instruments? Look closely and see if you could find the three views of the yellow mandolin. The top side and bottom are shown. There's also castanets resting near the center of the table. This painting is filled with opposites. Just as Cezanne balanced his still life composition with contrasting shapes on opposite side, Picasso places the image of a door in the upper left section and then balances it with a reversed line drawing of the door on the opposite side. The wallpaper on one side is reversed on the other, the table legs, etc. This painting is filled with opposites, one thing on one side, the opposite on the other. In addition to balancing the composition, Picasso also repeated colors and patterns throughout the painting. Notice the blue sky. Do you see how it's repeated? That color is repeated on the walls and under the table, that same blue from the sky. Now let's look at some patterns. There's some repeated patterns. There's a design on the tablecloth, the squares on the ceiling and the floor. The repeated colors and patterns make a path for your eyes to follow as they explore the painting, and they add harmony to the composition. When you see those repeated patterns, it keeps your eye in the painting, and it seems like it makes a little more sense. The next painting really is a still life painting, and Picasso did not try to add landscapes or figures to it, but he did change his style a bit. Why does this look like a Cubist painting that has been painted by a different artist? Let's look back. The colors are composed very differently. Almost the entire canvas is filled with blues, and there is a small amount of orange for balance. The shapes have thick outlines, and they are broken up with thin lines. Let's go back to the other one. Not really thick lines. Look at those thick outlines. There are more circles and triangles than just the cubes or squares. Perhaps Picasso is trying to get rid of the Cubist label. Now, is this painting realistic or abstract? The forms are abstracted because they are reduced to simpler shapes and lines. What other artists painted still life forms as simple shapes, like the cone, the cylinder, the sphere, and the cube? Think back to the beginning. Paul Cézanne, when we did that fruit bowl, he simplified them to simple shapes. Here Picasso does the same thing, but he goes even further by showing different sides of each object at the same time. Imagine looking at the still life from the front, then walking around and seeing it from the back, the top, the sides, and the bottom. He combined all those possible views in one painting. This Cubist style was such an exciting idea that it lasted for many years. Everywhere, artists were painting all sides of objects at the same time, and their paintings all looked as if they formed little cubes. Do you see how Picasso emphasized shape and form like Cézanne? He also left out details to make the shapes simpler. When an artist simplifies a form, it becomes more abstract and less realistic. Do you see how the fruit, they're just circles? That picture is a couple of simple shapes like circles, and there's some triangles. This is a still life in the Cubist style. Both labels Picasso hated. Can you imagine what a Cubist portrait or picture of someone would look like? Well, does this portrait show what the woman looked like or how she felt? This is how she felt. Picasso said it was a waste of time to show what the person looked like. Who would care centuries from now? What adjectives or feelings come to mind when we look at this production, this picture? Happy? No, I don't think so. I would say anguish, maybe sickness, tears, sadness, hopelessness, fear, darkness. The features have been reduced to simple shapes. Each shape has been changed to reinforce the feelings we just described. The eyes are shaped like tears. The handkerchief is shaped like a rain cloud. The neck is triangle shaped, almost as if she's choked up. There's some other shapes to show how she's feeling, like the tear-shaped nostrils of her nose, green lips instead of like a healthy pink color. This is not a portrait of a woman. It is rather a portrait of suffering and sadness. This portrait was made During the period, he worked on one of his greatest masterpieces called Guernica, which is in 1937, Picasso was commissioned or hired to paint a large canvas 12 feet high and 25 feet wide, almost the size of one of your classroom walls. He was hired by the Spanish Republic's Pavilion, and he was 55 years old, and he had become the most famous living artist. Just as he was planning this mural, the world was upset when German planes bombed the small, peaceful town of Guernica during World War II. In Paris, Picasso wanted to do something that would really make this world stand up and notice this cruelty. He immediately set to work to express his outrage through this painting. If we look closely at this painting, we can see there's a very upset horse. There's a woman in a burning house. There's a warrior with a broken sword. And there's a crying woman holding her child. Can you think of a reason Picasso chose to use no color for this painting? I think it makes it even more sad and scary. It also shows a bright contrast between that white and the black with no light or hope. So if we remember what Picasso did when everyone started painting in his style, he changed it. So this woman is painted very differently from the past figures we saw. This is almost going back to the beginning. The features are not distorted or abstract, and the colors are a little bit more pleasing and much more realistic. So what is not realistic about it? Her color of her face is very, very white, and her arms are a little flattened, but he's definitely painting in a more classic style. What we mean by classic is timeless, never going out of style. It was the first, it's been around the longest, and it's made history. Like classic Coca-Cola, classic art is art that never seems to go out of style. The classic style in art began in ancient Rome with the marble sculptures of figures having perfect proportion. The classic style of painting realistically went back many years in history and remained the only way to paint for centuries. This woman almost looks like she's carved out of marble. Her face and features seem so perfect. Picasso as a child had copied some of the classical paintings of ancient times. Listen to Picasso's words about the artists of long ago. To me, there is no past or future in art. The art of the Greeks, of the Egyptians, of the great painters who lived in other times is not an art of the past. Perhaps it is more alive today than it ever was. Now, let's meet Picasso when he is older and enjoying his success as an artist. Picasso lived to be 91 years old. During his last 30 years, he enjoyed great success and wealth. His signature became so famous that he could not write checks because when he signed his name, the check became worth more than the amount. But it didn't mean much to him. He cared little if his work was liked. He only cared about pushing himself ever forward and discovering all there was to find in art. Picasso ranks as one of the most innovative, prolific, and influential artists of modern times, producing over 20,000 works of art. He changed the very nature of art. Of the 20 most expensive paintings in the world, 7 are by Picasso. In my project, we are going to be doing some portraits, just like Picasso's Cubist abstract period. We will be doing some abstract portraits, and we're not going to be focusing so much on drawing them perfectly. We're going to be focusing more on the mood and shapes. So I hope that you enjoyed learning about Picasso and all of his different art styles, and I will see you for our art project with Picasso.